So guys, here are the 10 things you can do to combat racism or to reduce its impact in our society. So if you really want to make sure that racism is not used at the intersection with corruption to rob us of our economic growth or economic development, the huge potential to become prosperous in this country, here are the 10 things you can do.
Oh, this is my day. I'm ready to take it on, come what may.
So we're basing this on the principle of entropy in physics. Remember, the highest entropy is associated with the most disorder, chaos, and that's the lowest energy state. And we want the lowest energy state because that is a state where we have the least problems in society, the lowest disparity in wealth, the lowest differences. So if you integrate the society, we will create the kind of chaos that results in stability, right? The lowest energy state is the most stable state, and that means the lowest state is the state with the most chaos, the most intermixing. So on those principles, here are the 10 things that we need to do. Number one is we need laws to protect our ethnic minorities. We need to protect our vulnerable groups. So there needs to be penalties for discrimination and racism, right? So we need laws like they have in the US where if there's racial bias, the racial biased crime, it attracts a higher penalty. So let's do that in Guyana so we can protect our groups and we can penalize racist crimes that are based on race. Number two is we need to incentivize, we need to encourage cooperation and integration. So in this case, what we can do is we can incentivize the intermixing and interrelationship based on ethnicity. For example, we can have a housing community, a housing development where we give preference to people who are in interracial or interethnic marriages and who have mixed kids, right? So we can encourage intermixing by providing resources, especially for people who are engaged in intermarriage and intermixing and interethnic relationships. Let's incentivize that. Number three, we need equitable distribution of wealth, particularly as we begin to see huge amounts of profits roll in from oil. We need to make sure that there is equitable distribution of wealth, whether it be in building infrastructure that meets everyone's needs, regardless of their socioeconomic status, whether it be roads, bridges, airports, schools, national universal health care. We need to reduce economic disparity by equitable distribution of wealth in society. So number four, shop at, do business at vendors of a different ethnicity. So when you go to Border Market, you go to the supermarket, you go to Starbucks Market, you go to the local market, make sure that you shop from, you buy from vendors of a different race. When we were kids, and I was a kid growing up in Berbice, we used to carry our produce to the market on weekends. Chickens and eggs and vegetables that we sold from our farm. And so I have experience selling to people. This is a Port Morant market, you know, on a Saturday morning, or Rose Hall market on a Saturday morning. If you're from Berbice, you know these places, Tain and Port Morant and Rose Hall. So the majority of those communities were Indian, and we sold our goods in the Indian market, and we would sell out everything by 1 o'clock. So I was involved when I was 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years old in actually selling in a multi-ethnic society, and we shopped at Indian grocery stores. The corner shop was all the shops were Indian owned. So number five, employ people of a different race. Make sure you hire people. If you have a business, make sure you integrate your business, you hire people of a different race. Number six, send your kids to school with kids of a different race, of kids of different ethnicity. So make sure you integrate your kids go to integrated schools, right? So make sure they go to parties and they socialize from an early age, play school with kids of different ethnicities. Number seven, integrate the neighborhood. buy a house in a community of a different ethnicity. So in this country, we still have segregated communities in Guyana. You go on the on the Equitable coast or Quarantine, Berbice, you have these communities like Tane and Port Morant and Letterkenny and so on that are entirely of one ethnicity. Why not go buy a house and live in a community where where you are not necessarily the person of the majority ethnicity? So buy a house in a community where you are not of the same ethnicity. Number 8. Try food. Share food from cultures that are different from yours. Some ethnicities are different from yours. So if you live in a big city, you can actually go to a grocery store that supplies food, groceries, for communities of different ethnicities. You're in New York City, go to an Indian restaurant or an Indian store and shop for food that is different from your ethnicity. Or an African store. You know, any one of the Nigerian or Kenyan or Ghanaian, South African stores, British, Australian stores. So you can experience a different ethnicity in your community, in your city, right now, something you have in your power to do. Number 9, if you live in a rural community, move to a city. So if you live in a community that is monolithic, make sure at some point in your life you move to a city that is diverse, that is going to let you experience diversity. And number 10, call out racism. It doesn't have to be racism against your group, but wherever it exists, you need to call it out, you need to name it and shame it, and you need to speak up and confront racism and racist situations. So when President Trump says Mexicans are rapists and criminals, you don't have to be Mexican to be offended. Everybody should be offended, because we can't let politicians divide us on race, while on the other hand, surreptitiously, they're stealing our resources, pocketing the nation's wealth, and putting it into their own accounts, into their own bank accounts. So we can take responsibility. If you want to see this country prosper, you want to see this country benefit from resources, you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. And guys, you can support Raffle Nation on Patreon or on by PayPal, and I have there in my description below and in the about section of this page, this site, information how you can contribute to this channel on Patreon and PayPal. So if you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe, share this video with friends and family around the world, and let's root for the prosperity of this great nation. Later!